Hello F1 fans, welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. As usual, you're with myself Vasco, David and Harry, and in this episode we have breaking news. Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari. In the past few hours, the medias have gone crazy with this news, and there are a lot of talking points because that is a move that is changing the whole structure of F1 now. The grid, the teams, what is going to happen after the regulations in 26? These are questions that we're all going to discuss in this episode. Let's start with what is going to be the impact on Mercedes and Ferrari. Let's hear the viewpoints of one Mercedes fan and one Ferrari fan. Who wants to start?
I will start. First of all, just one of the biggest news stories in history of F1, maybe the biggest driver transfer I have ever witnessed for sure. Lewis Hamilton will leave a big impact on Mercedes negatively. If he leaves, there is just no structure, I feel like, in that team. You're not going to let George Russell, an extremely young, talented driver, but extremely young, lead that team to championship aspirations or even develop that car in any way. I think they might fall not only behind Ferrari, but behind McLaren and could be struggling as soon as Lewis leaves that team. It feels like he is done with Mercedes, especially after the last two seasons that have been extremely poor for his standards. And how do Mercedes fill this hole? Well, there are options. The most expected option, we could say, could be Esteban Ocon, as he has really strong connections with Mercedes, and it's almost as if Mercedes have promised him that he will get that seat eventually, and this looks like it might be the time. The other option, though, it has to be Carlos Sainz, and I think the best option in this case, Carlos Sainz going without a seat, so it would be perfect for Mercedes. He's a really good driver, and he has proven it over the last few years driving for Ferrari, and I think he could definitely keep a strong balance with George Russell.
I have a really outside shout here, but just hear me for a second. What if Mercedes decide that they want 2025 or 2026 to be the year of the big changes, and right now, if Hamilton goes to Ferrari in 2024 this season and they have to replace it with somebody else, what if they decide to rely on experience and on somebody who is very familiar with this car, with this team? What do you think about Valtteri Bottas back for one season and Theo Pourchaire getting that second seat at Alfa Romeo?
I would not consider this a real possibility. In my opinion, Valtteri would not go back to Mercedes, as Mercedes themselves wouldn't want it. They would want someone like Carlos Sainz, as David mentioned. He has already gained a lot of experience in a top team. Esteban Ocon, as he said, is another quite logical option, but unfortunately there is nobody who can fill the shoes of the big Lewis Hamilton. Nobody can perform at this level.
I'm saying this because right now we have very little time. Like, only Gazzetta report for now that Lewis Hamilton may go to Ferrari even in 2024. But what if he goes? Like, they have very little time, and Ocon has a contract. I'm not entirely sure that Mercedes will want Carlos Sainz, and they have like really minimal amount of options, I think, for that little time. And it is very logical for me if Theo Pourchaire goes to his academy team and Valtteri Bottas, somebody with great experience, just decides to join for one season.
Yeah, based on the experienced part that you were talking about in your build-up, I was actually kind of expecting Fernando Alonso. One season, think about it. Short-term solution, but could have massive impact on the team. And I think that would be really fun. And also we can clarify that the 2025 contract is for sure confirmed by Lewis. So if they need a new driver for 24, I think Alonso could actually also work in that case as well.
Actually, I think that is logical too. Not like it is going to happen. We still don't know, I repeat, but Like Alfa Romeo and Aston Martin, I think are the only teams on the grid right now that have like proper number 3 driver. They have Theo Pourchaire and Felipe Drugovich, who can fill the shoes of either Bottas or Alonso. And yeah, it is going to be different, but if Mercedes have a great offer for them, then things like that can happen. And I think if Fernando is given the opportunity actually to work with Mercedes, and he has already driven a car with a Mercedes engine, it's logical too. It is not like it's going to happen. I think it's much more probable, like 90% chance of Lewis joining in 2025. But still, there are some interesting options that can shake up the whole grid and make the start of this season amazing.
Let's talk about Ferrari now. This is a team that has been in a crisis for over 15 years, haven't won a single championship, and now they have just signed one of the greatest drivers in F1 history, and the guy that has been constantly beating them throughout the last 10 years during the hybrid era. This will seriously boost them, I believe. I think Lewis will develop that car. He will share his experience with the team, and I think that driver lineup, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, it is one of the most impressive driver lineups in F1 history. It is so bold, it's so spicy. It's just, I think that this is a huge step for Ferrari and something that really changes the game. I think they not only beat Mercedes once Lewis gets on their side, but they will crush them and challenge Red Bull.
Speaking of the lineup in Ferrari, I would say that the inter-team dynamics would be quite interesting, as Charles wouldn't be the number one driver, as I personally believe that Lewis is going to take that spot. And I'm not sure if Charles is going to like it, as it's his team. He has been there since 2019, and I thought that he would want to, be the number one driver and fight for championships. And now that Lewis comes, it's going to be quite difficult for him.
Well, this is the moment for Charles Leclerc to prove himself. Is he really capable to win the world championship? If you can beat Lewis Hamilton in equal machinery, you can compete for the world title.
We talk about equal machinery, but don't forget the fact that we talk about Ferrari. And what if they don't have great car the next season? Imagine Ferrari having the fourth fastest car, but having Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Isn't that going to be the end of Lewis Hamilton's dreams and hopes if he has a slow car? And again, with Charles Leclerc, I think if they have poor car and don't have the best performances, that is going to make the environment in the team toxic, which is the worst thing that can happen to Ferrari. Like having two amazing drivers but having poor car just right before new regulations.
Yeah, I definitely can see that as a possibility, but why else would Lewis make this move if he stopped believing in Mercedes? He has to believe that Mercedes will show up with an even worse car. He's probably been looking at the development of the new car and he has not liked it. It's probably been similar to the last 2 years. So I think that this move, maybe it doesn't show Ferrari's strength, but it shows Mercedes' weakness. And I don't believe that Mercedes will now turn up with a better car than Ferrari.
I think that we cannot be sure about that, but if he joins in 2025 with a view for 2026, if he knows something, then 2026 can be like the defining season, the season where Ferrari goes back to where they belong, at the top of F1. But right now, if he joins in 2024, imagine having two poor seasons, because if Ferrari has the car, if they have a great car in 2026, I think that means sacrifice the last two seasons of this year, like 2024 and 25. And I'm not sure how this is going to affect Charles and Lewis. But we have the other talking point. If Ferrari has a great car, if they are second, for example, in the championship, and if Lewis and Charles have a great relationship, then in 2026 we can see the scariest version of Ferrari we have ever seen. And if Lewis wins a title in Ferrari, then he'll submit his place as the greatest of all time. 8 world titles and one with the greatest team of all time, because we still don't know, but if a thing like that happens, then this is going to be one of the best moves that we have ever seen in the F1 history.
Not only does this impact Ferrari or Mercedes, but it impacts the whole market. And one driver that will be severely impacted is Carlos Sainz. You got to feel bad for him. He has been a really good driver for Ferrari, and it's almost shameful that he just gets kicked out of the door just like that. And what do you guys think will happen with him and the free spot at Mercedes, and having those spots filled up by who? Like, who are the prime candidates now for this vacant seat in one of the top 3 teams?
Let's look at the options. The first one, but first, are we talking about 24 or 25?
We can talk about both situations. It's relatively similar, so.
Okay, if it is about 24, then Ferrari, they're having Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, and Mercedes have George Russell and one vacant spot. And the first name that comes to mind actually is the reserve driver, because this is the easiest option, and this is Mick Schumacher. But I'm not convinced by his performances, and they would have to cause a chaos on the whole grid if that move happens in 24, because that means Lewis to Ferrari and some other driver, Ocon or even Alonso or even Bottas, moving to Mercedes. And after that, one of these 3 teams would have to find the role for the reserve driver.
I don't think Mercedes are gonna opt for Mick Schumacher, and I think that they're going to offer a live vest to Carlos Sainz, as he is a really talented driver who is going to be out of contract without a team, and they're just going to give him an offer he can't refuse, as he has potentially signed a contract with Sauber for 25, maybe, which is going to become Audi. So, this is gonna be probably the best option for him before moving to Sauber, potentially, I believe.
There were strong rumors, especially last year, that Carlos Sainz will make the move to Audi once his Ferrari contract is up. But it is crazy to think that Carlos Sainz really has the potential to have been in the Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes families throughout his entire career. He is in a really tough spot, though, because if he doesn't get that Mercedes seat, he's going to have to go back down the grid and get a midfield team at the best, which is not ideal considering the progression of his career, and I don't know how motivated he'll be to do that.
But imagine, something really interesting sparkled right now in my mind. What if Mercedes decide to opt for Oscar Piastri?
I actually don't see that. I think Oscar, he is too young and he's invested in McLaren at the moment. I don't think he doesn't have like 5 years behind him like Lando Norris, which I actually could see as more viable than Oscar Piastri.
But imagine having rookie with this high ceiling, and he is considered right now the second driver in McLaren, but everybody knows that Oscar has an immense potential. And what if you're 20, is he 20 years old? He's turning 21 this year, I think. Imagine if you have that kind of potential and you have shown it in your first season in F1, and Mercedes, one of the top teams, offers you a seat, and you know that if you perform well, you can be like a super good, super young talent, being the number one, or at least fighting for the number one spot at one of the best teams. Because I think it would be easier to fight against George Russell for number one spot rather than fighting against Lando Norris. And overall, Mercedes have more money, they have that legacy of winning in the past few years. And I think if Mercedes decide to opt for Oscar Piastri, he would be super tempted by this offer. And if Oscar Piastri decides to join, let's imagine in 25, if he decides to join Mercedes, if they have an offer for him, then Carlos Sainz can go back to McLaren. We all know that it worked, and the combination of Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz really worked. And another theory that I have is that Lewis will go to Ferrari in 25, and Red Bull are going to drop Sergio Perez, and then somebody from the Red Bull Academy, in this case Carlos Sainz, can go back to Red Bull and prove that he has a place there. These are just some theories, but why not?
I feel like, actually, I think Carlos Sainz has burned that bridge. I don't think he wants to be associated with Red Bull anymore after the way he left the team. Although I can see it. Like, there's so many alternatives. It feels like some kind of movie we're watching and we're all just theorizing about the plot line.
But although you think he burned that bridge, but if Red Bull offers him a contract, and you're offered a contract at the title-winning team, and you have a legitimate shot at the title, although your teammate is Max Verstappen, and we know that he's the most talented driver on the grid right now, and we know how dominant he was, but actually I think there is a real possibility of that happening. If Red Bull offers him a contract, he would be super tempted, in my opinion, and it would be very, very, very hard to say no to such offer.
The last thing we'd like to discuss, how is this going to work out? Is this going to be the biggest move of Lewis Hamilton's career, even though he already had arguably one of the best moves ever when he moved to Mercedes? He now goes to Ferrari and try to do the unthinkable, almost win a championship with a Ferrari. How do you think it's going to work out? Do you think he's going to succeed or fail? And how will this work out for Mercedes as well?
I think the Ferrari move is going to work out for Lewis Hamilton, but this depends on the car that they provide him with. So if they provide him with a car that can fight for a championship or is like second best but close to the best car on the grid, he's going to definitely make it and get the title with Ferrari. And for Mercedes, I'm quite uncertain of their future, because now that they have lost their lead driver, it's only going downwards from there, I think. And I don't predict a bright future for them.
This can go both ways. The first one, Ferrari, they produce a championship winning car in, I don't think it's going to be in 25, but let's imagine in 26, and Lewis will be fighting against Leclerc. It would be very tough for him, but imagine if he wins the title in 26 with Ferrari, GOAT debate ended, he's the greatest of all time. But if in 25 the things don't go really well, and after that in 26 Ferrari don't produce that championship winning car, and for example Charles Leclerc fights and beats Lewis Hamilton, then this is going to be scary and terrible move for Lewis Hamilton's career. So I think only time will tell, but right now this is looking like one of the most exciting news that we have ever received in Formula 1, and only time will tell what is going to happen, how the things are going to be done by Ferrari, by Mercedes, by Lewis Hamilton, and if he is going to regret that move or he is going to be regarded as one of the smartest people to ever drive an F1 car.
Yeah, we just gotta stay tuned as there's news constantly updating, and with testing coming up in about 2 weeks, the F1 season is only going to get more and more interesting. But this is all for today from us. We're looking forward to the next episode. Till then, like, subscribe, and follow us in AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook, and stay tuned for more of our content. Thank you, and remember,
if you no longer go for a gap that exists,
You're no longer a racing driver.